Welcome to the 21st lesson of SmartKnitter, Knit Instructions Level 2. In this lesson, we will talk about the feeder setup techniques. Let's look at the first file with jacquard and bird's eye backing. Let's translate and see the problem. We can see feeders 1, 2 have knitted tucks along the knitting area. There are tucks near the shoulder short rows area as well. Back to SmartGraph. Go to Feeder Setup. Set the yarn end of feeder 1, 2 to left and that of feeder 3 to right. Translate again. There are no tucks along the knitting area now. Let's look at another file. Upon translation, we can see that the feeder 6 is brought to the right side with tucks after casting off. Back to feeder setup. This is due to feeder 6 being set as Revel yarn. By default, the Revel yarn end is set to the left side. Check to set the yarn end to right. Translate again, and we can now see that feeder 6 is brought in from the right side and directly brought out after knitting without any tucks. Let's look at the next example. This is a sleeve panel with intarsia. It is set to have the intarsia feeder kept in the middle without being brought out to minimize yarn ends. But we can see feeders 3 and 5 is doing a lot of kicking in the middle, causing the file to be quite long and inefficient, having 1921 lines. Let's go back to SmartGraph to make some changes to fix this. Go to Feeder Setup and change the yarn end of feeder 5 to the right. Feeder 3 and 4 set to the left. Feeder 5 is now brought in from the right side. It would not stay in the knitting zone and thus can avoid excessive feeder kicking. The machine code is reduced by almost 500 rows, saving a lot of knitting time. Let's look at another example. This is also an intarsia panel. During translation, there is a prompt warning feeder 3 is clashing at 2 locations, row 422 and 421. It is because feeder 3 stays in the knitting area at the narrowing section. Go back to SmartGraph and go to Feeder Setup. Set the yarn end of feeder 3 to the left. Translate again. The feeder 3 now stays on the opposite end of the narrowing direction and will not clash with the needles. In the next example, we have a collar band with intarsia. After translation, we can see one of the intarsia feeder is not showing and is marked as feeder 0 in the machine code. Go back to SmartGraph and go to feeder setup. We can see feeder 2 is placed in the wrong position. Chinese domestic machines and stole machines only uses the outermost slots. Drag the feeder 2 back to an appropriate position and check the yarn end to be on the right. Translate again, and we can see feeder 2 is showing correctly. Let's look at the next example. Translate and look at the problem. We can see the left shoulder is missing a lot of stitches in the machine code. Back to feeder setup. Change the yarn end of feeder to the left. Translate again. We can see the feeder now knits the right side first, then move on to knit the left side and is brought out after. Let's look at another intarsia example. There is a prompt showing the feeder 5 will clash at multiple positions. Feeder 5 knit from the right and stopped in the middle of the panel and would clash with needles during transfers. Back to feeder setup. Change the yarn end of feeder 3 to the left, whereas that of feeder 5 is set to the right. Translate again. There is no more prompts concerning feeder clashing. We can see now feeder 5 is brought into the knitting area, kick back. Feeder 3 is doing the same in the opposite direction. This marks the end of this tutorial. Thank you for watching.